I shouldn't be causing any.
Keep the old kids too. We just want some new kids in.
Yeah, but we don't have enough names.
She was a former teacher.
Oh, nuts.
Passed away. Yep, she was. See, she never taught when I was here, but I knew from everybody else. Oh gosh, what did
Elementary, I believe.
Was she?
Science, actually. Wasser. Middle school. She taught some high school science early, I think, on, but mostly it was middle school in Ireton when the middle school kids were still in.
Okay.
She was doing some.
Okay, it's 6:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order. There is a quorum present. We have two absent, Mr. Coons and Mr. Sellers. Do we have like a motion to approve or to amend the agenda as been presented to us?
So move.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, move made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Gregg. Any further comments or discussion? If not, all those in favor of approving the agenda as it's presented to us indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. We're moving on to number 3, which is request to speak on agenda items correspondence. We'll go ahead with the correspondence, and we'll start out with Mrs. Vasquez.
We received thank you cards from the families of Janan Wasser and Ashley Riemann. And then we have students of the month. We had many high school students of the month, middle school and high school. They get recognized over the intercom at the school. A lot of kids working really hard this month.
Moving on to Mrs. Thonstead.
Ireton Elementary PBIS students of the month for December were Jesus Rodriguez, Alexander Topete, Parker Miller, Jenna Vandeslent, Christian Duenas, Madeline Bonham, and McCaden Couples. In Haywarden Elementary in December, they were Aaliyah Martinez, Yurette Ruiz, Brian Robles Topete, Jonathan Flores Topete, Shaylin Duenas, Clementine Teek, Israel Topete, Lindsay Van Bakov, Seth Persinger, Elsiana Chamorro, Madeline Clucky, and Keegan Parmeter. Very exciting.
Thank you. Do you have anything, Ryan? Or does anybody else have anything?
I do. The custodians wanted to thank the wrestlers for the awesome work they did. The coaches, the players, they stayed after the youth wrestling tournament and after the high school tournament, cleaned up the gym, picked up all the garbage. They were very helpful, and the custodians were very appreciative.
That's nice to hear. Thank you, Tammy. Moving on to the consent agenda of number 4. This requires action on all the items. We'll start it off with the December minutes. Has everybody had a chance to go through them, look at them, and verify that they're accurate? Okay. Moving on to the December invoices. Everybody had a chance to go through it. Mr. Cook had a chance to go through it with Jake. Anything that you...
The only thing I saw was pea gravel in the,
Okay.
pea gravel in
You know
the,
what- okay.
We already took care of that.
Okay.
But that's the only thing I saw, and then pea gravel was in the nutrition account. So I don't know.
Put that in any of the meals this week. So no cash, Mr. Cook.
Well, I wondered what that, what that was gonna
I
be.
wonder we got a balance in there, we do. Okay. Anybody have any questions on the invoices? Anything you want to point out to us, Ryan?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Moving on to the Secretary's Financial Report, Mr. Kramer.
Tammy, if you could bring that up. Very similar to last month. Yes, thank you very much. On the general fund, again, we are below where we were the previous year. Again, this is within our budget that we estimated. The cash balance It's going to be brought down about, when we end, our estimate at the end of the fiscal year will be about 300,000 compared to where it was, 300 to 330,000 compared to where it was last year. So we're right on that trajectory. That's one of our financial goals, was to set that cash balance at about 20% of our total budget. Revenue to date, as we have anticipated, is up. This due because of increased enrollment and also the TLC grant. Expenditures to date are again up. Again, this is anticipation of spending down that cash balance, so this is all what we did anticipate, nothing as a surprise. As we proceed to the management fund, again, we knew there would be a decline in the cash balance there, where we thought over this budget year, this is where we're receiving our savings and reduced our tax levy. We're able to reduce our tax levy on our taxpayers by reducing that amount in the management levy. So our cash balance was going to reflect a reduction in balance. Again, our revenue to date reflects that we reduced our revenue by not taxing our public as much as we had in previous years for our management levy. And our expenditures are up due to insurance increases and other expenditures due to our retirement. So we'll have to take a look at as we, excuse me, as we design our budget and approve our budget for the next fiscal year. We will have to probably increase that management levy slightly, but the hope is to still remain within that trajectory, what we have previously, of slightly bringing down that tax load. Activity fund, cash balance is significantly higher than it was last year. Again, we've talked in previous months about the reason for this, due to the multiple projects that have flow in and flow out money. Revenue to date is significantly higher than it was in the previous year, as are our expenditures to date. And that's all I have for the financial report.
Okay, any questions for Ryan? Okay, we'll move on to D. Under personnel, we have some contracts. Mrs. Vasquez, could you go through that with us, please? And even, Ryan, could you take care of the other one that Mr. Boza was going to do?
We hired Joe. There we go. We hired Jill Mosby as a paraprofessional position. That was due to the shuffling of the secretaries and that sort of thing. So she started with us on Tuesday and is doing quite well. So that's what we have there.
And then we did offer a contract to Mark Renz. Mark is one of the assistant wrestling coaches due to numbers, the increase in numbers this year.
Okay.
Where's the cutoff when you decide on a new additional coach?
Cutoff for numbers or the cutoff on like a date? Are you thinking numbers for wrestling? It's sports specific, and it's approved on a yearly basis in the coach's handbook that we approve. For wrestling, I believe off the top of my head, I think it's 33.
We have how many coaches?
We have 2 assistant coaches and 1 head coach for 33.
So any number above that, we hire another one.
Yes, that's correct.
I thought that's how it worked.
Yep.
but
No, that's exactly how it works. And I'd have to look off, I don't remember off the top of my head if there's another jump for an additional coach beyond 2 assistants, but I don't believe there is in wrestling. I think that's the maximum for wrestling is 1 head and 2 assistants, if I remember off the top of my head, but I can check on that too.
Well, I could look that up.
Yeah.
I just wondered what the number was.
Yeah.
And do we have any other positions that we're still advertising for or looking for?
Not at this time. Nope.
Well,
Yeah, I do, don't we?
we have some daycare associates, don't
I
we?
think we are always part-time, looking for additional part-time daycare. That's kind of just available. Subs typically part-time though,
It's in the ad.
hourly. Yeah, it's usually in the paper as an ongoing, people interested. That's it though.
So with the changes in the secretarial positions with Mrs. McManaman and Mrs. Jasper, did we take, because both of them had some of these para duties or associate duties, right? So did we make 2 part-times into a full-time?
So what we did was,
Or,
Tracy, in her original position, she worked, partially with the kitchen as with the tickets. And so then like, that kind of delineates where the funding to pay her comes from. Partially in the classroom, a couple hours of the day to help at-risk students, and then partially in the office. So Tracy moved over, she's 100% in the office now. Laura Jasper now fills that position, so she does some of the ticket taking and help in the classroom, and then part-time in the office. So with Laura not being a para then for the students, we had to, what we ended up doing was then a current para we had that was working individually with the student moved over to take her position with those students, and so then we had to fill. So that's, in the end, I think due to like levels and stuff like that, it actually saves us money after a while.
okay,
Because
and then,
the new para is brand new, so.
oh, and then who assists Laura with the lunch now?
We actually have, I wanna say like 3 or 4 paras that are all trained to do the lunch, like Laura Cervantes. Laura Jasper still does one lunch duty. Jose Garcia helps with lunch. Oh, and Leanna Schreiner. So
Oh.
between those guys, they all do breakfast and lunch. And then we have, you know, if someone's gonna be absent, we have someone else that knows how to run that computer and to do the lunch tickets and stuff, so.
Okay, thank you. All the items that we've talked about require action or a motion and a vote taken. I guess what my suggestion would be is to group A, B, and C together and then do D separate, being that they're actual contracts and need to be signed by the board. So if that's just a recommendation that I see, does that work for everybody?
Sure.
Ryan? Okay. So I'd look for a motion on items A, B, and C on the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve the December minutes, invoices, and secretary's financial report.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Gregg, seconded by Mr. Cook to approve the reports or the presentations of the minutes, the invoices, and the financials as they were presented to us. Any questions? All those in favor indicate of accepting those the way they were presented and the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Moving on to D then, under the personnel of the 2 contracts of Mrs. Mosby and Mr. Renz. Do I have a motion on the floor?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Gregg. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor accepting the contracts of the 2 people in the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Then we move on to number 5, under the reports. These are all just informational, but we have a TLC report. It's probably written, and so it's presented to us. Mrs. Thompson is not here this evening. Then we have an activities director report from Mr. Boza, which is in writing also. Then we have an elementary report by Mrs. Tonstead.
Yep, and my report included, it's all written, but it included information about our quality rating system for the daycare. We did submit paperwork in November. Bon submitted all of the very hefty notebook showing all of the things that we have worked towards meeting. And so we submitted that back in November, and we just last week, and here it says we're waiting on hearing back from the state. We just received word on last Tuesday, no, it was the day after report was due, anyway, Thursday, that we are in preliminary works as a 5. We just have to have the Iowa Extension State University Extension group come out and do a walkthrough and observation and meetings, interviews with staff to verify the 5.
So what does that mean?
That puts us at the same level. It's a quality rating system around the state at a level 5, the highest quality daycare in the state. That's that high quality level. We Care's at a 5, as well as the preschool in Ironton Christian's a 5, and it's been something we've been working for since I've started as the principal. And prior to, I'm sure, I know Ryan was looking into it, so it was something we've been looking at making happen soon, as
So
fast
this
as
will
we
be the
could.
first time in the history?
It's been 5, right, first time it's ever been a 5. We were a 4 2 years ago, and we maintained that last year. We didn't even try for the 5 yet, because we wanted to get everything ready to go, and having the daycare board in line and helping along with that too has been really, it's great, it's huge. It's exciting. Good news and great work from Yvonne Obink.
It's a very significant rating.
And
I
it does bring
remember-
money. It does
Yes.
bring more money. It increases the annual money that the state gives to double. So last year, I think we received about $1,800, so it's not substantial, but it's something, which is
You mean to
helpful.
3,600?
Yeah, so that helps the bottom line, and it can be used for anything, so it's pretty great.
A 50%
We'll take it.
raise.
We'll take
not a
it,
claim.
that's right. So,
Okay.
we'll let you know when we have final notice on that.
I have a question. How many programs is the elementary school using that has abbreviations SQP,
It's not just
PIDS,
elementary.
HOL?
Many times I ask
Education.
that.
Well, we can defer that till next meeting.
I will work on that. Would you like that at the top of my priority list?
I actually believe that the
Or can I work on it for the next year? Because it will take a while.
the state actually does hand out at one of their conferences, and I don't recall if it was the superintendent's one or if it was at IASB, but there's a booklet and it's a thick booklet that is just on the abbreviations used in the state.
Actually, if it's the Iowa Association of School Boards, if you'd call down there, they could probably get you one,
Yeah, we can work on
a
that.
hard copy. They
We can work
probably
on
would,
that.
they probably, if it was presented in a meeting, they'd have a copy of it.
Abbreviations
Yeah,
in
it's
education.
amazing statewide how many there are out there.
How many do we have? That's my
I would
question.
say we probably utilize about 3/4 of that booklet, at least.
We have to know
Which I would
all of
probably
them
say,
for because a lot
could
of it's
be
federal
well over
too.
150 abbreviations that we use.
Well, I think I think Ken's asking a different question.
Well, I want to
Yeah.
know how many we have, that's what I'm interested
Okay.
in.
Well,
But it is,
There's
and
a
they
lot.
change.
It's a
They go
start.
from RTI to MTSS to now something else. So like
Yeah.
they change, so you have to know all of the ones that
Oh,
were
like-
So
prior
like if the
to.
feds,
Left
yeah,
behind,
if it's,
blah,
if
blah,
the
blah.
feds give
Now
you some
the
acronyms, the
other
Iowa
one.
decides to change it and give it a new
other
set. It's a fun game.
okay, so how many are in our building?
I'll work on that.
Okay, thank you.
Because you also remember the once in sales tax has been called 3 different names in its
It's okay with me.
entire use.
We just throw
At least
alphabets
that's
up
not
in the
going
air
on in
and
the
when they land,
elementary
that's how
building.
It's true.
Okay.
acronyms.
Okay, is that all you have, Carrie?
Hilarious. Yes.
Okay. And then we move on to the high school, middle school report with Mrs. Vasquez.
So my report is submitted for you guys. A couple highlights would be the great work the staff has been doing. We have semester finals this week. And so last week, I got the staff together and we looked at some kids that were needing a little extra help. And when you walk through the halls in the evening now, you're going to find teachers in their room staying late, working with kids one-on-one. You're going to find those same teachers probably helping kids get home at night, kids coming in early. I've seen kids in the building as early as 7 to go get help. We're seeing, you're hearing in the hallways kids talking about their grades and trying to, last ditch effort to change anything they're not happy with. The other thing, besides hiring Jill, we are also preparing this week for the equity site visit for the district. They're primarily looking at the high school, so that has been a lot of work to just get all the information for the things that I know that we're doing. So they'll be looking at civil rights and equity, males, female ratios in classrooms, looking to make sure that our facilities are handicapped accessible and making sure that we're meeting the needs of the families and that sort of thing. So Wednesday night, there'll be family interviews with various parents, and so we were making calls today, and so far our families are awesome. We have a lot of people that are, yep, I'll be there, so that's really great to hear. And then we have students who are going to help with babysitting services if parents need that when they come for the interviews, so that's all. And so once we get our report back from the state after that, I will share that with you.
Thank you. Any questions? Are you done? Okay, I didn't mean to cut you short. Okay,
I was just, waiting to make sure there wasn't any questions I didn't answer.
yeah, okay, thanks.
I didn't have any.
Okay. Okay, then moving on to Ryan.
I'm going to present the report that was provided to us from the Director of Education, where the American Institute for Research started, and they are contracted to actually conduct research on the TLC program over the years to determine what accomplishments it attains and what things that may need to be taken a look at. Really, all in all, it's really to determine at the state level if the investment in TLC is making a difference. Just some highlights, just to bring us back to where we've been at. In 2014 and 15, 39 districts in the state were chosen to participate in Cohort 1. And then in Cohort 2, 76 districts started the next year. And then in Cohort 3, which we are a part of, 221 districts. So now, as you kind of progress, you'll notice some of the narrative findings that are interesting. If you move to page 5 of the handout, it talks about the percentage of teachers surveyed who reported available teacher leadership roles in their district, in their school or district. Primarily, the highest there you'll notice were instructional coaches or mentor teachers. These are two areas in which we have positions, and also lead teacher at the West Sioux District. You'll see many of the other options that other districts may have in that situation. And actually, I misspoke. We don't have the lead teacher. We have the TLC leader or coordinator, mentor teacher, and instructional coach. If you look on page 7, again, another graphical representation. The percentage of surveyed teachers who reported the following teacher supports. Primarily, the largest support area that is being provided over Cohort 1, 2, and 3 are the analyzing and interpreting of student achievement data and using data to align instructions with student needs. And then the third, student engagement. And this is one that's very big for us, student engagement. And the next, in figure 4, it talks about the administrators and their perspective. So it's a little differing perspectives there and how they're displaying their information. And then the next one on page 10, just as a highlight. And these are those teachers that participate in the following collaboration. These are not just offered, but which ones they participate at school for at least once a week. Primarily, they're getting support from colleagues to improve their practice. They're either formally or informally providing support to colleagues in their school, or they're talking with colleagues about how to improve student learning. Those are utmost importance. Boy, that's plenty loud. And then finally, I'm going to go to the last one that Mr. Cook and I spoke about in one of our pre-meetings, page 12. This gets into the standardized assessment scores. And this is interesting. And what's going to be really more interesting is you could see there was a separation even before the implementation of TLC, from TLC schools to non-TLC schools. What will be interesting to see in 2014 was where it was implemented. And so I think what we'll see, in my hopes, is that we'll have an increase in the TLC cohort on standardized assessment scores. Now, that isn't necessarily going to happen overnight. This is something, as we know, it's a long-term piece that we want to see improvement in instruction. Improvement in instruction then leads to better, results on assessments, all assessments, including standardized assessments. And so we should see, hopefully, an increase there. Now, the challenge that we have upon us at the state level is that the Iowa Test of Basic Skills actually is not assessing the Iowa Common Core, or the Iowa Core, as they call it. And so the state, as we've talked about a little bit, is changing from the Iowa Test of Basic Skills next year to the Smarter Balanced Assessment for its state assessment. So what will be interesting is, one, we won't be able to really have a good comparison because we're changing the state test. And I wonder how they'll kind of correlate that information. But the other is not having a standardized assessment that is assessing what you're primarily teaching doesn't necessarily match up either. So there'll be a lot of changes in this. I'm very curious to see how they'll correlate that data when we start using the Smarter Balanced Assessment. Even the bigger question that doesn't pertain to TLC is how the state plans to implement going to the Smarter Balance Assessment, because Smarter Balance is completely computer-based assessment, not paper pencil. Not all districts in the state of Iowa are one-to-one, and there are a lot, as we found this year, with going to completely statewide based assessments, as they've done in the tier, which is the reading instruction and the reading testing. There were some major hiccups, and actually the shutting down of the site and finding out the company couldn't support that many students. So it'll be very, very interesting over the next couple of years in regards to assessment, following along how that TLC. Next month, Ms. Thompson is going to come and bring our own West Sioux data and present that to us to see what we look like on the local level and concerning the same information. Now, we won't be able to provide standardized assessment results because we're still in our first year, but it will give us a good indication on what teachers are feeling regarding the survey, on what areas they're improving on, and how much they're utilizing the TLC program. Any questions?
Concerning the Smarter Balanced testing, how well are we positioned to carry that off technology-wise? And what grades take those tests?
Yeah, it'll be structured 3 through 11, and it'll be every student. We are structured pretty well. There will have to be some changes, but really the state has given us very, very little guidance on this, because they have not. What they've been waiting at the legislative, they've really been at the Department of Education level waiting for legislatures to determine how they plan to fund this. Last year they chose not to fund any of the transition at all. And there's been hesitation to change over to the Smarter Balance because, and rightfully so, Iowa Test has served us well for generations. So it becomes more of a political piece and an adjustment to how it's going to change. There's been recommendations that we're still going to go on with it, irregardless of funding, and we will be able to implement it very well at our district. I'm not overly concerned because we have a lot of the, per se, groundwork there, with good connection speed, all of the right hardware. The training component will be the challenge to kind of get everybody on board there, double checking the work and how well it's functioning on our iPads, how well it functions on our Macs. It is a web-based platform, so it should work pretty seamlessly. If I were a district that was not a one-to-one district, I would be very concerned right now, because that's going to create a high level of stress. And for the most part, they have said, they haven't even said what time of year we may take it. If they implement it to take in the fall, that's really going to up the ante. I anticipate it probably going to be taking it in the spring. I would anticipate probably a March or April date coming out that when they'll have us take it, but it's going to be statewide. It's not currently in the Iowa Test of Basic Skills. We have 3 windows to take it in. We have the fall, winter, and spring norms. We choose to take it in the very end of the winter norms is when we take it. But Smarter Balance is a little different. When I was in North Central Manly, we used a computer-based assessment that was not Smarter Balance, but there were some similarities. And actually, it was computer-based 12 years ago, and we were able to function pretty well within it. And it's MAPS testing, and it's become more seamless as the years have progressed. So if it's internet-based, web platform-based, we won't have the challenges with a Mac or Windows-based product, so we won't have those, and it'll be a little bit easier. But I'm hoping for some guidance very soon from the state, but they've been very hesitant to provide any because of the lack of funding discussions around it.
Well, if you have all of our kids from 3rd grade up all on the internet and accessing the same website at the same time, I don't think that probably has ever happened before unless it's been testing in some way.
And when you think also multiple schools too.
Well, yes, if you have all the schools are taking it on the same dates, then that creates a capacity problem for the server on the other end.
Yes. Yes, there are a lot of things that, now, the fortunate thing is Smarter Balance is a statewide assessment in other states. So Iowa wouldn't be the first to utilize it. So I think the capacity from their level, I'm hopeful and confident of it. Like you said, depending upon the requirements and how much bandwidth each web page requires, that will be a real leading indicator too on how it's conducted and what guidance they provide and how they recommend it be assessed. The good thing is, as I said, other states have had to deal and other districts have had to have similar implementation pieces, and so there's been experiences out there that we can garner from at least.
And so as far as the content of the test, are the Smarter Balance tests similar in content to the Iowa Basic Skills?
Similar in content, more specifically related to the Iowa Core, because that was a requirement in order to present to the committee that decided on and recommended to the legislator on adopting Smarter Balanced that it be specifically aligned to the Iowa Core.
And our curriculum is also aligned to the Iowa Core?
That is correct. And one of the things too, we use, a lot of things that kind of get a lot of attention if you were to Google Common Core and those things. There's a lot of opinions based on that. One thing to remember when we talk about Iowa Core, Iowa has been a local standards-based state since back in the late 90s. Many of our standards that we have and have updated have very similar relationships with the Common Core, with Iowa Core. It's really not, it's not a dramatic change educationally that we've been seeing when people talk about Common Core or Iowa Core being new. It's really about what the requirement is and how we relate those words and those narrative in regards to standards to what we're instructing and the emphasis that we place on it.
And the Smarter Balance test, is that the same in every state?
I believe it's specifically, they have different versions towards each state because I believe many of the states had the same requirement that Iowa did, that it be specifically curtailed to their, whether they decided to adopt the Common Core or whether they did choose to tweak it a little bit like Iowa did in choosing that we're going to adopt the Iowa Core.
That was originally one of the advantages of it, I believe, is that you could compare how is the state of Iowa doing with other states if they're taking the same assessment.
Yes. The overall score, I believe, is based on that, how they report and what they disseminate and how they then determine how you did on each standard is curtailed. So probably it's more reports based than it is actually the content of the test. But I think, and also too, very similar tests that we do and have been chosen to do, that they have national tests and different things out there too. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a change, and I'll be very curious on the follow through for it too, because it isn't the Iowa tests, and we're so used to utilizing that assessment.
Are you expecting to get results quicker?
Definitely. Although Iowa tests have been, over the years, have increased their results and the availability of results dramatically. It's down to about 2 to 3 weeks on from the last time we take the test to when they get back, which it used to be, 6, 8 weeks was pretty common.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Not on that.
Okay. Are you concluding in your report?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I'm interested in the bus report.
Okay.
This time we've lost some columns in our bus report. We do not have labor and material, which, huh?
There was nothing in them.
Well, if you go through the bills, you will see parts and stuff from school bus and everything like that. So I'm still interested in that, if we can get that back on board. So it's not, it's just.
I'll find out why those weren't included on this month. They may have been bills that would have been in the previous month's report. I'm wondering if he would have placed them on his narrative report previous month, because that was when he did the work, and then now we were billed for him the month after to pay the bill. I'll check on that for sure.
All right. I just put them, just interested is all.
I'll try to match those up.
Any other questions or comments regarding Mr. Kramer's report? No? Okay. Moving on to the board member reports. We'll start out with Mr. Cook.
Yeah. Okay. December was an interesting month, no less. However, we showed improvement from last year. 1% better for attendance. We're moving up on this thing, except for last month, but every other month this time we've been ahead of last year. So it's starting to come around. I like that. I like that. I don't know if anybody else does, but if you're gonna,
Yes, we all like that, Ken.
if we're gonna do the job, seems to me like we got to be on the job to do it. That's kind of common sense to me.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Okay. Do you have anything, Larry?
Yes, we've had some discussions before about the availability of substitute teachers, and that there are times when we can't find enough. And visited with Mr. Kramer a little bit about this, and as I understand it, in the last 2 months, there were 52 instances where we had teacher absences that we could not fill them with substitute teachers. And I find that troubling. Now, in those cases, I'm sure we cover them in other ways. We bring in special teachers or associates or administrators. But when we do that, then they're not doing the job that we hired them to do. So I would like us to try to come up with a plan that might increase the number of substitute teachers that we have available to us. I've got 5 proposals that I'd like you to consider. The first is to increase our substitute teacher pay from $100 a day to $110 per day to compete with other area schools. And that would put us up towards the top. I believe MOC also pays $110 per day. Number 2, after 20 days of subbing in a school year, the sub would receive an additional $20 per day This would encourage subs to feel committed to West Sioux and reward the subs that we use the most. Number 3, allow the administration at their discretion to offer a $20 bonus for difficult-to-fill positions or situations, because we know that certain classes and certain positions are harder to fill than others for a variety of reasons. This would give you some flexibility to attract teachers to fill those positions. Number 4, encourage district residents to become certified to substitute by offering to pay half of the application and class fees so that we can increase our sub pool from within our district. And number 5, to make any changes go into effect immediately once approved by the school board, because I believe this is a problem that we can't wait to address later. I'm asking that the administration discuss these and any other proposals that you might come up with, develop a plan to address the substitute teacher shortage, and report back at the February board meeting. Any questions about that?
I do.
Yes.
After 20 days, explain that, how that would work. Is it 20 days of continuous?
No, I don't think
After-
it should be continuous.
After
Total.
20 days of subbing,
Right.
they get an extra $20 per day
Yes,
from there forward,
yes.
not backwards, not reaching backwards.
Right, yes, that's correct,
Okay, so
yes. Right.
okay, so I guess how, who and how, if we would do multiples of these or one of these, who monitors this? Don't we have a computerized program that does it? So would that turn into a personnel watching this and implementing it?
It would have to be monitored, yes, and
Okay.
implemented.
The verbatim, I shouldn't say, upon their decision to openly give, you're talking basically to leverage, okay. And
For
then,
hard-to-fill positions,
okay,
I'm proposing that the administration have some discretion there to attract teachers to fill those hard-to-fill positions.
the effective immediately, instead of you're doing that versus starting beginning of next year.
Yes.
Okay. I got one question then, and maybe I don't totally understand this, but on days when we have the most problems filling them, is that days when there is perhaps, and I'm not jumping on professional development, I'm not against it or anything. Isn't there, do we have the ability to say not today? Do we ever do that? Not today.
Use your mic.
Yeah, when a teacher says, hey, I need to schedule this,
Okay,
but I want to make sure that before I schedule it, if that's a day that there aren't subs already, that's a day I can say, yeah, it's not a good day. And so,
Okay.
we say no, yes.
okay. And the reason why I'm asking these questions is I'm using, I don't mean there's illogical or they're not logical, but I'm taking the logical avenues first in my thought process. Okay. So, do we have instances where we do not know we do not have the substitutes until that day, that morning?
Yes. Especially, that would primarily be related to injury or emergency, illness, that sort of thing. But it can happen where we have people out for professional development and then someone ends up being sick, And then as far as that not today, I guess the way I even interpreted that too was, we have some professional development that For instance, there's one training that we want to be able to get some people to, but we can't do it till this summer because the trainer was only available in, I think it was October, and it landed, was it November? And it landed, yeah, it landed on a day where we're gonna have a bunch of other people out. So we're gonna have to wait till this summer to train, some people and hold that initiative off and that tool that we were gonna use till next year, because we knew that we would just, there was no way we're gonna try to get a few more people out of the district that
Well,
day.
and your answer, that question that I've asked was with that answer before, and I totally understand it. I'm not jumping on PD.
Right. There's some that we don't have control over, like if they're mandated, it's this day and that's it, and too bad, you know, there are some like that, but others we have said no to.
And then subsidizing the teacher certification for substitute, what would that entail in cost?
Do we know how much that costs for a person to get a sub license?
And that was a good question. Were you thinking those who have a 4-year degree, I assume?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I was figuring that was the requirement, that we would pay for the,
There's one class, I believe.
yes, that's correct, through the AEA. I believe I'm pretty sure it's less than $100 per individual.
And the application fee could be 45.
Yes, yep. Okay. I'm very intrigued by that idea, Larry.
How much time does it take?
It is, if I remember correctly, it varies on the amount of time, because some of them, the AEA offers it either in 1-hour chunks or 3-hour chunks. I believe is it 3 credits?
it's 3 courses, so like, it's 3 credits, yeah.
Okay.
What I saw, I believe, was
I can
90
Hold on, I'm
hours.
trying, I'm trying
There
to
you
pull
go,
it up.
90 hours. That would be
90
about right.
hours,
Yep,
yes.
90 classroom hours, yeah. That makes sense, because they,
Student teaching, like they actually come into the classroom and do observations.
It's an $88 charge application fee, so, well, 85 with a $3 credit card use. So it's an $85 application fee, which that runs in line with what your teaching license application fees run, things like that. So it sounds pretty standard.
Okay. Does all the substitute pay and all the stuff we're talking about in these 5 suggestions from Mr. Gregg, would they come from the general fund?
yes. There would be a few that would be possibly grant funded, because the grant typically pays for a sub if they're out with the grant. So there are some, but the percentage would be, I would guess 90%.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking these questions is just to be relative to what Mr. Gregg started his conversation with, is 50 instances of where we have, I'm not saying it's wasted, but sub-level or maybe not desired teaching time or time spent in the thing has to be of real importance to our school, because Mr. Cook talks about teachers being in the classroom. Well, that's one thing. Keeping them at a high percentage, but not very often do we monitor the absence, the total absence, which is actually, we're trying to influence the learning and the academic level of our school. It's as important, or maybe even more important. And we've talked about this just recently, several times. And I think Mr. Gregg is bringing it up, especially with number 5 being effective immediately, because we're trying to solve this immediately.
Well, if we have a problem, and I think we do, if we have 52 instances where we haven't been able to bring in a sub when we needed one, that it's a big enough problem that there's no point waiting if we can find the funds for it, and if we can agree on, what we should try to fix it, because it affects kids directly. It's the person in front of them that day in their classroom.
Do you think this is significant enough to help our issue? And I'm speaking to the administration. Do you think any of these suggestions would influence?
Yes, I think it would have an impact.
Yeah.
I do want to take a look at, for sure, what we'd be looking at if we were to use last year's data as an indicator, if we were to make those changes financially, what kind of impact it would have on the general fund. But the first two we specifically have talked about in previous months. The bonuses, the district residents, those are really good ideas, and I want to check those out to determine, what we would be looking at. I did and have had individuals from the state, or excuse me, individuals from our district, as we have been having these discussions in the office, come and talk to me about taking the substitute course because they heard through our discussion. So I've had 3 actually of those conversations. Some that didn't realize that it required the 4-year undergraduate degree, but others who have other jobs, but it allows them some different times during the month, which if they could, it is a good job to be able to go, if I only want to work 5 days a month, they have that option, or I only have 5 days in my month that I'm not doing my other full-time job, and to get some other supplemental income. So there's a lot of advantages to the position of substitutes.
Is it considered a W-2 or a 1099 position? It is? Okay, so we take the taxes out.
Yep.
There's a little sidebar on that. Winnebago, Nebraska, pays $150 a day for subs. It was in the Sioux City Journal.
Yeah, that was part of that, in that article too that I inserted last month when we had it as part of our board packet. So yeah. Yep.
I would concede, I would think there is a tremendous reason why it would be that high.
Yeah, I'm just putting that out there.
More can I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
It was just a sidebar.
No, it's
So, one of the things that, as administrators, I imagine you reflect upon is, one is what Ryan said, how it does affect our general budget, or excuse me, our general fund. And 2 is implementation and watching of this. If we would go to an extra 20, like number 3, or perhaps even number 2, would require a more watchful management of a person versus a computer system. Correct? And Tammy, you're the person, right? Probably. Right now you are.
Yeah, currently the same.
I think we should give Tammy a raise also as part of this.
Okay. Now, okay, as the chairman of the board, now we're starting to get into some dark waters.
yeah, exactly. There you go.
I guess how I look at it, if the demand is there and can help, somehow or another, we have to address this issue. I mean, ultimately, don't you believe, as administrators?
To kind of put it in perspective, as I was going through this, there's interesting things to look at, because we look at, in comparisons typically to last year. So for last year, there were 10 absences that we did not have subs for the whole district. And when we look at positions within the whole district, we're talking, hundreds and hundreds of open positions during that time. But there were also 10 this year that we had unfilled in September. Same number, different year. In October of last year, we had 21. In October of this year, we had 17. Now, in November of last year, we only had 7 that were unfilled. In November of this year, we had 20. In December of last year, we only had 5.5 days unfilled. December of this year, we had the 30. Or 32, excuse me. So, as we continue to watch this, the last 2 months have been dramatically different than the previous month, or previous year, excuse me.
And what would you attribute that to?
One, in November, we had a lot of absences because of the APL professional development training. We had a number of teachers that we had out. Now, we also had in November, and these two can speak to that a little bit more specifically, were to a number of our subs that we use a lot had other family obligations during those months, so they weren't even in the communities at that time, so they were unable to sub for us. So their jobs, if they worked, typically, a job, a day almost, that increases quite dramatically. If we take one who's always available for us, as Tammy knows, she has the ones that seems like they're always here. If they're unavailable for a month or 4 or 6 weeks at a time, that's pretty significant. Carrie, you were going to say something?
I just also want to point out last year, we had some half-time teachers that we used them for subbing half-days. And that was really beneficial. We didn't have a sub teacher on contract, but we kind of did because they worked half-days. We had 2 of those last year. That really kind of made it nice to have, because we could say they would work in the morning and then they'd have the afternoon, and we could schedule them or say, hey, can you sub for this afternoon? So we'd have both of them sometimes in one room or for one teacher specifically. So I know we used them a lot last year, and they both received full-time positions this year, but that was something we could look at in the future too.
Well, I was wondering,
It does make an impact.
has our pool been smaller this year than last year, partly because of the TLC, that we've hired some people that might have been subs for us are now full-time in the classroom? And maybe Tammy can answer what kind of, if we have as many subs available to us this year as we had last year.
We have actually three or four new ones that we actually gained this year. I lost one of them today because she moved away, but just about every one of our subs doesn't need to work. So the increase in pay would just be a bonus for them working. I don't look for it to be an incentive for them to want to work more. Because if they wanted to work more,
They would.
all the time in the world for them. And nothing.
But
I had probably 12 subs that were available according to our computer system for the one teacher I had out today, and every one of them told me no.
yeah,
And I don't know that.
even if having a pool, having a large number of teachers in a pool, we're still competing with other school districts. And so just because they're in our pool doesn't mean we're attracting them and getting them when we need them. If we offered a little more, maybe we'd be more attractive to some of those people that are on the edge.
It absolutely would not hurt.
And weather, like these months are the months that tend to be harder to fill, because some of our substitutes don't want to drive in when the roads are a little bit icy. So that's something we look at too, where they don't want to, like at the elementary, they don't want to do outside recess duty. So one of the things that Sherry and I have worked really hard at is saying, hey, we will cover all duties if you're willing to come. So that's helped a little bit, so they know that that's not something they have to do.
Definitely.
So just
the other-
thinking
the other-
outside the box is what we're
Right,
looking
the
at.
other factor of this, not only salary, but how do we treat our substitutes when we bring them in, and are they going to want to come back and work for us?
Do we lack there with anything?
I don't, I was gonna say, I think that they get, I see the way the kids act when we get subs in, and most, especially like our retired folks that come back, the kids really like them, and I think they like to do the job maybe more for the, seeing the kids just a little bit versus the finances that go with it,
Okay.
you know?
I'll say this, though, that I know there are instances where subs have come in thinking they were doing a particular job, but were asked or told that they had to go to a different classroom. They didn't like that. Or like you said, they might have had outside duty when it really maybe wasn't appropriate for their situation. And things like that, you know, somebody has a bad experience or they may not come back.
And
Or
that's
be
a
placed
tough,
in a classroom that they didn't really.
right, and that's a tough decision to make because you're then deciding, I have a substitute in the district that I'm going to say, even though they have a hesitation, I'm willing to let that class not have somebody rather than assign. And sometimes you need to, unfortunately, there's that balance of, having to tell somebody to do something and having to upset them. There's that balance.
But we do have our system set up so teachers substitutes can sign up for particular classes.
Correct.
And there are substitutes that will just sub for particular classes or particular buildings.
Right.
And so if we then tell those people, well, no, we need you in this other building more, then that might not sit well for them.
It's
And
very
that's
similar.
not their problem, really.
Right.
If
Well,
the way we have it set up, they sign up for a particular classroom.
but I'd
And
look
they
at it.
should expect to fill that classroom. And it's our problem to fill the other classroom if we need to. And, yeah.
But there's,
Always give them the option to tell me no,
yeah.
and I have yet to have anybody say, I don't want to.
But sometimes too, just like an employee, you have to tell them something they don't want to do all the time, and you have to make that decision as an administrator that there's a fine balance. We ask very nicely and hope for the best, but unfortunately sometimes and if they're not telling Tammy or the principal that they don't want to go and they're asking, but then later they're saying, well, I didn't really want to do that. I really can't blame the administration or Tammy for asking.
But if we can incentivize more people to serve as subs, then you won't have those situations come up as often.
I guess I look at it, I'm not saying the dollar amount, but I'm looking at the methods of 1, 2, 4, and 5. I don't know if I care for their used to using extra money as leverage. I think that becomes standardized real quick. But, and maybe instead of 110, 100, we already talked about raising it to even that level. We've had conversations to compete with and to match, because we have to be competitive. We do. And that's just being competitive to where they're at. That's not even increasing to pull them away. So we have not maybe done quite as much, but after 20 days of continuous, if there's a methodical way that we can do that and delegate the management of that, I don't know if it needs to be 20 if we do number 1. I don't know about all that. That's going to come from a recommendation. We've already done that. We added a lane level for masters. So we're trying to get good people here to do a good job. And that's what number 4 does, somewhat, I'd say.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And that would be a one-time. That's not per year. Right, I mean,
Exactly, yeah, that's.
So I guess I can see that. I certainly agree with Mr. Gregg. If it's coincidence this year versus last year, for instance, if it was because of the APL, or if it was because you had an instance where it comes in, we have to look at that with some understanding and understand that's why the reasoning of that. But we just can't, we should address this issue. I mean, and that doesn't mean we have to just go throw money at it either, We can manage our way through this maybe, perhaps. We've done well in other things of bringing attention to it and managing it. But as teacher pay goes, and we stay at a standard 100, over how many years have we been 100? Since I was
10 years.
We need to look at something to bring up and to perhaps try to address what Mr. Gregg has brought to us.
And I consider these just discussion points, just to start, and I'd like the administration, I'm sure you can come up with variations or new ideas or whatever it takes, and come back with a recommendation for us. That's my hope.
Well, we have that same, yeah. It is encouraging to hear some of those ideas that, from the perspective of paying the fees, some nuances that we haven't discussed necessarily that I'd be interested to see what type of interest there is out there also in regards to that, of increasing the amount within that pool. Because I think a lot of times too, like Tammy had said, you try to think and narratively reflect on, would just changes in salary increase our pool? Would the increase after 20 days increase our pool? And I think that's where I want to really take a look, and we can quantify that into what is it going to cost us. We can have a pretty good idea of what that's going to entail and look at for the general fund and what type of increase that might entail, because as we increase that expenditure or anything along with that, what we'll need to do then is decrease expenditures from another area in order to appropriately save dollars from the general fund. But of primary importance, this issue right here.
Okay. So under this, Mr. Gregg, I believe, not speaking for him, he's recommending that we that as administration draw some conclusion and present to us a recommendation.
Yes, and a question, do we have the amount that we pay substitute teachers in board policy? Yeah, I'm not sure either. But that would make a difference
not
too.
sure
We may have to make a change in school policy to do
Correct,
that.
yes.
So it might take us a couple months to actually implement.
If we would want, there is the opportunity to forgo second reads in a situation like that. So there is that possibility. But yes, thank you for thinking that. We'll find out exactly where it's listed and proceed from there.
Okay.
Thank you, Larry.
Yep.
Okay. Larry, do you have anything else?
Do you have something?
Yeah, I have a little something.
Okay.
I'm just listening to all that's going on, and then we don't say much about if you're going to substitute. Do we have an exit thing for people who substitute to find out how the students treated them?
As part of the system that we have, the substitutes, it actually does ask them for their experience.
And do we get any input on that?
Not
Probably
a number, unless typically if there was a problem or has been in the past, they let us know immediately in regards to that.
Because
Yep.
there are qualified people, I think, sitting at this desk or in this room
Yes.
that could substitute. Two things, we're limited with the amount of money we can make from the district. The other thing is the treatment that old folks like me get treated sometimes in the classroom is something that I don't go back to.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a reason why I might not do that,
Right. Right.
because I think sometimes when subs are there, the job being done is probably all right, but the treatment that the kids give that particular person is something that we don't even want to write home about. So,
It is a possibility.
I faced that.
Yes.
I think there's that element. I don't know that it's different from the kids of today. I mean, I remember my classmates being mean to subs, but then I know that we've had, like, we had a sub who was wondering how to handle certain situations, and, you know, we sat in the office, I talked with that sub, and we talked about, you know, this is what I would do in this situation, this is what I would do in this situation. So the sub went back to the classroom because they were going to be there 2 days. And so the first day, at the end of the day, there was like, well, I'm not really sure what to do here and there. And we discussed it, and then at the end of that day, the sub came back and was like, everything went awesome, thank you for that, you know, input. So I think there's an element, too, of, you know, when you are a person who visits the building versus person that knows the ins and outs of all the kids and the way things are done, I think that's the tricky part, because kids don't like change. So if you're expecting something different than what they're used to, you know, but being able to help and support people in that situation, you know, then things turn out good. So, and that individual's been back with us, you know, after that, and things have gone well. So,
Okay,
yeah,
I've experienced some of that myself.
yeah, me too. I was sub
See,
once too.
There you go. So,
I haven't had that problem yet.
no, lucky you.
Well, maybe we'll take the substitute
Sure.
authorization course.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity.
I do have one other issue.
Go ahead, Mr. Gregg.
Talked to Mr. Kramer a little bit about this last week. The possibility of allergic reactions in kids has become a serious health concern. Peanut allergies, food allergies, insect bite allergies for school-age children. And we know that EpiPens can save lives of children who are having serious allergic reaction. But EpiPens are expensive for families to purchase, especially if they have to provide pens for home and school and other situations so that their child has coverage. I would like us to consider purchasing several EpiPens so that we have a pen in each school building for an emergency. I'd like to ask the administration and the school nurse to meet and discuss the idea of providing EpiPens in each school building and report back to the board next month.
And
You
an
had a chance to,
I did. I had a chance. She's going to get us some more information, but it is something that I'll just have more information on. Currently, all of our students who require an EpiPen have a spare at school, and there haven't been any hesitations on that. This would be, I did not realize this, that they do expire, which I anticipated, so you have to buy one every about 2 years. Currently, the EpiPens are about $600 per pen, and you have to have a doctor sign a prescription for the school, which they've been given the availability to do. And then the other piece that she was looking into was if a student, if you were to give a student an Epi shot, what would happen if they weren't requiring that and having that type of reaction. So those are some of the questions I wanted to answer, and then also to what other districts have gone and made this change since they've allowed this at the state level. So we'll have that information for you as an agenda item in February.
okay, thank you. I do think that there is an opportunity for schools perhaps to get the EpiPens at no cost. I also believe that schools can get a supply of EpiPens without a prescription. And the other thing is, you sometimes have kids that haven't been identified as allergic, that have allergic reactions, that need it. So that would be another reason to have one on hand, even if they hadn't been identified as.
My biggest fear would be to give a shot to it, and what are the ramifications if that student wasn't having an allergic reaction?
Right. There,
That would be,
there is training that is required, I believe, to give an EpiPen shot. But it's very easy to do. And they have training EpiPens. But yes, the question of, who is getting the training and what are the situations where you would give it and what would be the ramifications if you gave it under conditions where a student shouldn't have gotten one. I don't believe there's health ramifications, but it would
yeah, I
be
don't know.
good to know that.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Thank you.
Okay, I got several things here that I want to talk about, just in short abbreviated things. Earlier in the board, in the financial reports, Mr. Kramer talked about the tax rate. I think it's important to visit that. Occasionally, maybe because I'm in the farming sector of where my business is, there's a lot of talk about how high the taxes are and that they have not gone down. I want to talk about that just a little bit, and I have some questions, so that way it's to the general public and perhaps on the visual, or even if it's in the paper, however it is, that we are addressing what's really happening. Is our evaluations went up. It's not because the school increased or even the state or the county increased their tax rate, because we lowered it, I believe, was it 0.95? And there was a lot of thought, and there was actually quite a bit of discussion amongst the board when we did that, and you can see the ramifications and perhaps even some uneasiness from a new administrator of how that affects us. So with that, I want to understand, I want everybody to understand that we are trying to keep everything in line and pass what we consider as savings, or perhaps even use our savings to subsidize and to lower what is a high tax rate. I mean, we, as far as the school district, we are one of the highest ones in the state. We have been for many years since I've been on the board. But we are, and that was an attempt to recognize that and to give a break. One is it helps everybody because it's based upon your evaluation per thousand, a mill levy, or per however you want to say it. So it is recognized, and it was meant for relief. And because we have taxed, I mean, it was as high as 24.57 at one time.
Highest in the state.
Yeah, and we were the highest in the state. And so we have gone down considerably since then. Okay, so I want to thank, the taxpayers. I want to thank the board, the past board, who several of them aren't, one of them that was part of that is no longer here at that time, but I want to thank that board member who made that and is a resident of our district. Next thing I want to do is I want to thank and I want to recognize not so much the institution, but what an institution did for our community by being the lowest bid. If you don't think about it, actually what it's done is, most people pay the most to do something. These people are actually receiving the least for what they did for us in our bond when we refinanced that, and that was due to the First State Bank, which is a local institution, and decided that in their thought process that would support our school, which is important in their business and in our district. And I want to recognize that. Ryan brought it up at the meeting last time, but it's nice to have that support. And a lot of our businesses, we see it all the time, support our district in ways that do not get publicized or do not even get probably noticed that much. And so I want to recognize that we do have districts. We have a district that is showing support from every avenue there is, and that's important. I mean, that's tremendous. I mean, that saved us I believe it's going to save us almost $13,000 per month.
Yeah.
And that's huge. And then the next thing, one of the things I want to do is, the daycare has been an issue with the West Sioux District since its implementation. And I don't mean an issue, but it was a new thought process that you established. You know, we were always on the edge, and we were always looking for the future of turning things around. And with that being done is, you know, we did some financial things. Perhaps there has been some management things that we've done with the nutrition side of it that's making a difference. The financial side, where we took out one of the people that work for us and put it into a different account, which makes a difference. And with that, you know, we're also including and trying to do is to take a noteworthy thing of a level 5 versus a 4, which ultimately gives us financial good financial repercussions, but actually is a pride. And I think that's good. When we start not chasing the pride, we've reached a level that, you know, we start leveling off. And I also want to thank, and not in particular order, but, you know, Mrs. Obink, and I want to thank Mrs. Thonstead, I want to thank Ryan Kramer, and all the people that work there, and all the people that use our daycare for their family's sake, that it's very satisfying to see when we have a plus $15,000 sum in a month, when probably a year ago I think it was minus 20. Now that was due to an issue where we weren't quite up, our bookkeeping was off just a little bit, or not caught up to where we're at. But that's tremendous, because I don't remember a time when we had a balance there per month at that level in the 7 years I've been here. And I think it's been 8 years. Is the daycare 8 years old? 9? Okay. Well, anyway, I think that's enough I think that institutes recognition over and above your report or Ryan's report or the questions, and I wanted to bring that up. So that's my rant for tonight. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, moving on to number 6 of new business. This all requires action. What we tend to do here, we go through everything, and then we'll go back and we'll ask for motions on each individual one. So we got policies under Mr. Gregg. Can you go ahead with those? These would be the second, well, they're not all second reading.
They are all second reading, I believe, yes.
Oh, they are,
Yes,
okay.
this is all required,
me.
yes.
So we've gone through what the changes are, and I think Tammy has given us the policies with the changes included now. So these were all changes that were recommended by the School Board Association when they did a review of all of our policies.
Okay. I'm just going to go through them, so that way we got a chance to go through. Tammy, you have a fundraiser?
Mr. McVeigh and the girls' basketball team would like to have a free throw-a-thon. You would sponsor a child with how many free throws they can make out of 100. And you sponsor them $1, they make 30 out of 100, you give $30 to the basketball program. And before they do that, they would like to have the board's approval.
Okay. Do we have any questions, more questions for Tammy?
When are they going to do this, if they do it?
Soon, that's all I know.
Soon, okay.
So they would go out and solicit people to sponsor them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Mr. McVeigh said it would either be, I'll give you $10, or I'll give you so much per free throw that you make. So that's what they would be doing.
Okay. Moving on to C, we have a resolution. I'm going to have Mr. Kramer go through that.
The next 3 items, if that's okay, I'll talk about all 3. In item C, This is a resolution appointing Bankers Trust as our trustee, and this is for the bond refinancing that we had the presentation at the special meeting to find out our rate. That First State Bank was the lowest rate, so Bankers Trust, we have to make a resolution that they would be our trustee. The next on D would be approving that we are tax exempt, and the certificate is attached in your board packet. This is what you'd be approving, and that is correct. And then the final resolution would be authorizing that First State Bank is securing the payment of school infrastructure sales service and use tax. And I believe Tammy provided a little cheat sheet for the board members in order to make the appropriate motion and how we can go about that.
Okay. Does everybody on the board understand what this is? Okay. Then Ryan, do you want to go on to F?
Yes, we have received an open enrollment application. This was a student who is a junior, and this student moved to our community this fall and resided in our district and chose at that time to, for family's reasons, to try to attend West Sioux and make a go of it before opening and rolling back to their other residing district. That student made a attempt and prefers that she attend the school that she previously attended and would like to open and enroll and return to that previous district. And that application would be in your board packet.
So is this one of these deals where we would continue, do we forward any of the
No.
monies? We keep
We
it
would
all?
not. Yes.
When does the other district approve it?
They would base their decision on ours as to whether they would approve that open enrollment in narrative without board action. Their administration is accepting that this student would be allowed to come back into their district.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is we'll go through each individual item, except for the fact of we have a cheat or a worksheet for items C, D, and E. So I'd like to start out with A. I'd like a motion from the floor concerning number A of policies. And I believe in your motion you should go through the numbers or the number of the policies.
Do you want the subject of the policies
No.
also? Oh,
No, just a reference to the number is
Okay.
fine.
I'll make a motion that we approve the second reading of policy numbers 202, 203, 206.3, 206.4, and 209.6.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion before we vote? If not, all those in favor accepting policies as indicated by the motion of Mr. Gregg indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Under B of girls basketball fundraiser presented to us from Tammy. Do I have a motion on the floor?
I'll move to support the girls' basketball fundraiser.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Gregg. Any more communication or
Yeah.
talk? Okay.
I have some more. That'll help the fundraiser balance for girls' basketball.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor of approving and accepting the motion for the girls' basketball fundraiser indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to the resolutions, the approval of the tax exempt certificate and the resolution authorize the terms of issuance.
I got the first one.
Okay.
Okay.
Go for it.
following our worksheet, so we do this properly. We can make a motion in regards to this.
Okay. Are you ready? Okay. I move that we appoint Bankers Trust as the trustee of the bond refinance and approve the indenture and execution of the indenture, whatever that means.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, this requires a roll call vote, so what we'll do is we'll have Tammy implement that. Is there any discussion before we vote? If not, Tammy, could you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we move on to 6D. Do I have a motion on the floor for the tax exemption certificate?
I'll make a motion, we approve the tax exemption certificate.
Is there a second?
Second that one?
Okay, any discussion, comments before we vote? This is also a roll call vote, so we'll have Tammy implement that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Under 6E, motion in regards to the resolutions. Is there a motion?
Okay. I move we approve the resolution authorizing and providing for the terms of issuance and securing the payment of $2,918,000 school infrastructure sales service and use tax revenue refunding bond series 2017 of the West Sioux Community School District, State of Iowa, under the provisions of Chapter 423E and 423F of the Code of Iowa, and providing for a method of payment of said bonds.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Gregg. Any further discussion? If not, this is also a roll call vote, which Tammy will implement.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion approved. Thank you for your time on this one. Then we move on to F of open enrollment. Is there a motion on the floor in regards to that?
I'll move we approve the open enrollment as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll support that.
Motion made by Mr. Gregg, seconded by Mr. Cook. Any discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor of granting the open enrollment request indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. That concludes our meeting. We looking for a motion for adjournment with the next regular board meeting held for February 13th. Same place at 6:30 in the evening. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Gregg. Any questions? If not, all those in favor of adjournment indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Thank you.
Larry, you better go substitute. Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Are you going on a vacation?